In the second video of this series, I talked about how Boolean values in particular are really useful for controlling how your programs flow, and we're going to be exploring that today in this video. Let's say we want to make a program that asks the user how many marks they got on a test. So from the previous video, we know we could do something like marks equals input, how many marks did you get? That should do for now. Let's just write a comment above to say that maybe the test is out of 100 marks. Okay, now it might be more useful if we convert this to an integer, if it's an amount of marks. I think that would make sense. So now maybe we want to congratulate the user, but only if they've done quite well on their test. If they haven't done so well, then maybe we don't want to congratulate them so much. So we know how to congratulate them. We can just do print well done. You did well. But then that is going to be output to the console, even if the marks are quite low, say about 2 marks. So what we can do is we can use what's called an if statement. We can say if marks greater than, let's say, 50, and then I'm going to use a colon here. And you'll see that under print, we've actually got an error here. And what it's going to tell us is that it's expecting an indented block or some indentation. So what that means is it wants me to put a tab at the start of the line. If I highlight this, you can see in VS Code that I've got 4 spaces here now. Alternatively, if I was to take this out and I was to go up to the colon and I was to press enter, it automatically puts in those 4 spaces. So this means we can write several commands. Maybe we can just move you did well to second print statement. Make sure to in the string marks. And now we can do multiple things only if the marks is greater than 50. So let's run this and see what happens. How many marks did you get? Let's say we got 75. We get the result. Well done, you did well. We run the program again, and now this time let's say we only got 20 marks, we don't get that reward. That's what we wanted, and we can see how if statements can be useful for branching our code into different directions. Now, what if we want to output something different if the user got less than 50 marks, or since this is over 50 marks, got 50 or less? Well, what we could do is we could add another if statement and say if marks is less than or equal to 50, and then we can say print you didn't do so well, something like this. And that would work. You can run it and find out if you want to. It means that we have to type out this condition again. And if you have quite a complex condition, we'll explore some more complex conditions later on in the video, you may get something wrong. Maybe you miss out the equals and suddenly you have an edge case that makes your program not work in a certain with a certain input. So what we can do instead, if we take out this if, is we can actually change this to an else. And what this means is when we do this check, marks is greater than 50. If marks is greater than 50, then we do this. If it's not, then we do this. and we can run this to test. Let's say we get 30 marks. You didn't do so well. So cool. Now we can do something different if the initial condition isn't met. Okay, so now we can do two different things. If we got over a certain amount, we did well. If we got under a certain amount, we didn't do so well. What if we wanted some more layers? What if over 75 is very good? Over 40 but under 75 is okay, and under 40 is not so good. Let's see how we can implement that. So we've got our if statement here. Marks is over 50, then we did well. Let's come underneath. Actually, let's change this to 75. If over 75, well done, you did very well. And then let's do if marks is less than, oh sorry, greater than 40, then print you did okay. So now let's give this a try. Let's see what happens. How many marks did you get? Let's say we got 45 and we get the result, you did okay. So cool, the program's working perfectly, right? Well, no, not quite. If we were to do a test with one of the other layers, for example, 80, we get something a bit bizarre. So this time we got 80 marks, and so obviously we get the well done, you did very well. But because these conditions are separate, we are now checking if marks is greater than 40. Well, since it's over 75, we know that it definitely should be, and so we must be printing this. And that's why we get the you did okay. Well, and so it doesn't actually work as well as we thought. So we need a way of joining these three layers together. And we can do this with another keyword. We've got if and else, and that is elif or else if. And what this means is we check this condition. If we meet the condition, we go into this block. If not, then we check a different condition, which is this one. If this one is true, we go into this block. And if none of them are true, then we go to the end. So now, if we try this out, click the console, run. We got 80 marks. Well done, you did very well. 60 marks, you did okay. And 5 marks, you didn't do so well. So these if statements that we've seen so far are powered by these conditions, as I've called them. And we can see quite intuitively that if marks is greater than 75, then this is what we should be doing. Else if marks is greater than 40 is what we should be doing. But Python doesn't quite see it the same way. Marks is greater than 75 is a condition that has static value. It has a Boolean value. So if we were to do print marks greater than 75, what we would get is we would get a true or false value. So if we put in 80, 80 is greater than 75, so we get true. If we were to instead put in 30, or any number less than 75, then we get this false. And so an if block, or an if statement, runs off of Booleans. let's get some test output down here and say if true. So this should always output at the end. Test output. If we were to run the exact same thing with 56, we should get OK. If I change this to false, we won't get the test output. And you can see actually the VS Code has grayed it out because it will never, the code is unreachable. We will never get to this line of code because where the condition is false, we will just skip right over it. Let's run just to show anyway. 56, you did OK, but we don't get test output. Now that we know how if statements work and we've seen the greater than symbol in action, let's have a look at how conditions comparison operators work. So we've got a lot of examples here. Let's just focus on these ones for now. Up here we've got 5 equals 5. So we've got the double equals here. And that means that we are comparing the two. We've seen plenty of times before that a single use of the equal symbol is used to assign a value to a variable. Where we have the double equals, we are comparing two values together, and that will give us either true or false. We've got less than or equals, greater than or equal to, and not equals. And these are all pretty good to know. Now, moving on, we can see that these examples here are only using integers. This also works with other types. So I've put in this print statement just so that when we run the program, it separates them out a little bit. But here we've got the string high equal to the string high, so that will be true. And we can actually compare values of different data types together. However, it doesn't always produce the result that we want to. For integers and floats, it does work. We can compare 5 to 5.0 and we get the return value true. If we were to compare the integer 5 to the string 5, the result we get is false. And the same goes for floats to strings. But we can use the type conversion that we saw in the last video to compare string to an integer by converting the string into an integer, or the integer to the string. And the final thing here at the bottom is you can compare two strings using the less than or greater than symbols to get alphabetical order, which can be useful in niche situations. So if I run this program here, we can see all of the different outputs here. So we've got true, false, true, true, false, true, true, false, true, true, false, true. That's all working properly. Then we've got true, true, false, false, true. Good, and then true at the bottom. Going back to this program, what if we wanted to select a range and give a certain output for that particular range? Maybe if you got between 90 and 95, we output the message so close, or something, you nearly got 100%. Well, what we could do is if marks is greater than 90, or maybe you want greater than or equal to, and then inside of that we do another if statement if marks is less than 100. So this is called a nested if statement. It's where you put one if statement inside of another. It can be quite useful, but we'll see here how there's a better way of doing this particular scenario. And then we can do our print so close. And this would work. Let's just give it a few tests. 80, we get nothing. 95, we get so close, but if we do 100, then don't get it. So it's working, but this isn't very nice. There's a better way of doing it. What if we instead combined these two conditions together? We can do that with compound operators. So let's get rid of this second one. Let's move print statement over to here. And let's come over to here and say and marks is less than 100. So we can use and along with two conditions, and the whole condition, we'll merge them together, will be true if the left and the right are true. So now if we run it, we'll get the same output. 98 or 97, be so close. 100 will be nothing, and less than 90 will be nothing as well. And so here are all the compound operators. We've got not, which will invert the condition. We've got or, which will be true if the left or the right or both is true. And we've got and, as we've seen, which will be true only if the left and the right is true. Just before we move on from this program, I wanted to mention that there's actually an even better way of doing it that applies to this situation only. Not this situation only, but it's not as common. If we were to do 90 greater than, less than or equal to marks like this, and take out the first condition altogether, we've actually got a condition here where it merges the two together. This creates kind of like a range. Check that a value is within a certain range. And this will work the same. So the last new thing we're going to cover in this video is while loops. Now while loops are very similar to if statements, except they repeat. So let's make something with a while loop. Let's say we've got a number, let's say 4, but maybe in the future we can change this 4 to be a random number. And so the main part of the program is going to be the user trying to guess this number. So we can say, we're also going to want a guess. Let's have guess equals, and then it can be anything that's not 4. Let's just call it 0 for now, because that's what we're setting it as to default. Now, what we can do is while num is not equal to guess, so until the user has guessed the number correctly, we can say guess equals int input guess my number, and then after that we can say if move it down a little bit, if guess is greater than the number, we can say too high. Elif guess is less than num, print too low. Okay, and if we want to put some kind of congratulations, we can either do else here, or what I would prefer to do is go out of the loop and do the print correct down here. So what we're doing, let's run the program at the same time, it might be a bit easier to see. We're setting the value of num to 4, setting the value of guess to 0, and we're checking if the two variables are the same. If they are not, we could also have done while not num equals guess, like that. Like that. While the numbers are not the same, then they're not 4 and 0. Guess equals int input, and so we are asking for an input. Let's say the first guess is 8. So we press enter, and so now guess has been changed from 0 to 8. 8 is greater than 4, so we print too high. And now we get to the end of the loop, while loop, and we go back to the top and we check this condition again. So now 8 is not equal to 4 instead of 0 is not equal to 4. So the condition is still true, we just have a different value of guess. So we're going to try again. We're going to ask the user for a number. Guess my number down here, as we can see. And maybe we go too low this time. So we go for 2. Guess is now equal to 2. 2 is not greater than 4. So we skip this bit, but we see an elif. Guess is less than 4, so we print too low. We come to the end of the while loop, go back to the top. 2 is still not equal to 4, so we ask for a guess again, and now this time we get it right. So this time, guess is now equal to 4. 4 is not greater than 4. It is also not less than 4, so we don't do either of these print statements. We finish the loop, we go back to the top, but this time 4 is equal to 4. So 4 not equal to 4 is false. So now that the condition here is false, we go past the while loop and we print correct. So the important takeaway here is have while true will be an infinite loop, and while false won't do anything. That was quite a long-winded explanation, but I think it does help to see how a program runs through step by step. It's certainly helpful when you come to debugging later on. Back in episode 2, I showed you this program here, just after we'd started learning about variables, and we could see how important they were. And now that we've covered conditions, if statements, elif statements, and while loops, we can now understand the full program. So I'm going to leave this up on the screen so you can have a look. That's all for this video. Next video will be about lists.